All right, in this video, we're going to be looking at lesson 3.4b, where we're going to learn another way to divide polynomials like we did in the last one, but this one only works when the divisor, what we're dividing by, is a linear polynomial. What the heck does that mean? A linear polynomial is a polynomial where if you were just to graph it, it'd be a straight line. So it's not a quadratic, excuse me, it's not a cubic, it's just a straight line if you were to go to graph it. So the degree is 1 is an easy way to remember it. That's a linear polynomial. So the first step is you're going to start by finding out what the 0 is. Okay, so we're going to start by finding the 0. So the 0 in this would be, well, what would we put in here for x to get 0 as our answer? That would just be 3. So the 0 would be 3. Then we're going to write the coefficients. However, this is really important. Make sure to use 0 when a term is missing. So when I look at my original polynomial, the degree is 3. So I want to make sure that every term is represented going in descending order. So we'd have 3, 2, 1, and then no variables. So I'm missing a 0x. I'm missing an x term. So I want to make sure that when I go to this next step that I replace it with a coefficient. So again, we're just writing the coefficients, no variables in this next step. So coefficient would be 2, -7, 0, and then -4. And then this is how I would set it up. You draw a horizontal line. Just give yourself some space because there's going to be some numbers that we put underneath those coefficients. What goes here is going to be our remainder. Okay, if there is one. All right. Now the process is this. We're going to add together whatever we have in that below these numbers. Now there's nothing below the 2, so when we add, there's nothing to add to the 2, so we just bring down the 2. And then what we're going to do is we are going to multiply 3 times whatever number we have here. So 3 times 2 is 6. And when we add those, -7 plus 6 would be -1. So again, repeat the process. So we're going to take 3 times -1, we get -3. Then we add 0 plus -3 would be -3. And then we repeat the process. 3 times -3 is -9. When we add those together, we get -13. So this has a remainder of -13. So what do we do next? So we're on, so we did the multiplying and dividing steps, so we did steps 3 and 4. Now step 5 is where we write our answer. So we're going to start from left to right, and we're going to start with the constant. This is our constant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put variables in there, so starting from right to left. So our constant, and this will be x, and this will be x squared. So the answer would be 2x squared minus 1x, or minus x, minus 3, and then we have a remainder, so we can say plus a -13 over x minus 3 would be your answer. All right, I know we just did one of those. I'm going to help you get this one set up. But let's see how you can do when you do this one on your own after we get it set up. So our first step is to find the 0. So the 0 here is -3. So what plus 3 would be 0? It would be -3. So we're going to start with -3. Let's look at our coefficients. So first off, make sure that we have our degrees, all of our terms represented. So 3, 2, 1, and then no variables. So we are good to go there. So let's write down the coefficients. The coefficients here, this first one would be a 1, and then a +2, then a -7, and then a -12. Draw your horizontal line, put a box down there for your remainder. So remember, I'll help you get started. Your first step, bring down the 1, and then multiply. -3 times 1 is -3. So I want you guys to repeat that process, add, multiply, until you finish, and then figure out how to put in the variables, and write your final answer. So go ahead, pause the video, and hit play when you're ready to check to see if you've done it correctly. All right, so let's see how you did here. So when you add these together, we get -1. -3 times -1 would be a +3. Add those together, you get -4. -3 times -4 is a +12. Add those together, we get a remainder of 0. So next, I'm just going to put in my variables. So remember, this is -4 is my constant, so this would be an x. This would be an x squared. So your answer would be x squared minus 1x, or minus x, minus 4. There's no remainder, so that would be your nice little answer there. All right, next let's talk about the remainder theorem. So sometimes they're going to ask us for a remainder. So all this is saying is that if p of x, so if the polynomial is divided by x minus a, the remainder is going to be whatever p of a is. What the heck does that mean? This is just an easier way to write it. if the 0 is a, and if you plug that 0 in, then, or whatever the value is, whatever you get, that is your remainder. That's an easy way to figure it out. Or if you look down here, the factor theorem, which we'll get to in a second, well, let's just talk about that now. It just tells us if we take a number in, if we put a number in for the polynomial and we get 0 as an answer, then x minus a is a factor. So if you get 0 as an answer when you plug in whatever the 0 is, then we know that x minus a is a factor of the polynomial. All right, so let's do that for this one. So we're going to try to figure out what the remainder is when we have a 0 of -5. So we could use the synthetic division for this, where the 0 would be -5, or we could just use the remainder theorem, which would be technically much easier. So every time we have an x, we're going to put -5 in there with the cube outside, with the exponent outside. That's really important. Whoa. So plus 10, and then -5 in parentheses with the square outside of it, plus 29 times -5, plus 25. So when you plug that in your calculator, so again, you plug it in exactly as you see it, you get an answer of 5. So that means the remainder would be 5 here. All right, so let's look at this next one. I want you guys to try this next one on your own, just by looking to see if we're dividing by x minus 6, so the 0 would be 6. So I want you to plug this in and see what you get when you put 6 into this function. So go ahead and pause the video and hit play when you're ready to check your answer. All right, did you get 0 as your answer? You should have. Let's see how you would do this. We put 6 in here for x. So again, if you plug that in your calculator, you would end up with 0 as your answer. So what does that mean? That means that figure out what times x minus 6 would give us that original polynomial. So we have to divide. Now we're dividing by a linear function, so we can just use synthetic division. So I want you guys to go ahead now and use synthetic division. So pause the video and use synthetic division to figure out what that missing polynomial, what that missing factor would be. Right, so you should have gotten what I got there in purple, and then added the x's to get what I got in pink there. And so that would be the missing factor. So when it says write the answer in polynomial form, that's where we get to put this all together with what we learned in this video with synthetic division and finding out if a 0 is a factor. So that's it. So good luck now as you work on your assignment.